like I said at the start, if you'd offered me 1-1, I'd have taken it.
But it was a great signing for City, getting him on a free transfer. My fear is that with Rodri going down for the season, he's going to play a lot more minutes than was intended.
Do not adjust your television screens. We are third in the Premier League.
Hello and welcome to the talkSPORT fan network Settle the Score with myself, Amos, a Manchester City fan, and Hodgie, a Newcastle fan. The match at St James's Park, Hodgie finished 1-1. It was a enthralling contest, I have to say, a gripping contest, a nice Saturday morning sort of warm-up. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, if you'd offered me the point early doors, I'd have been snapping your hand off. I think there's always been some good goals and some highly contested fixtures in the past, but what was it, 32 games that you've scored against Newcastle in a row? That's a worrying stat for sure.
Absolutely. I think at the beginning of play, might have said the same about a point, just because of the week City have had, the injuries, no De Bruyne and no Rodri. St James's Park, even though City have got a great record there, it's a cliche, but it's always a difficult place to go. Let's kick things off then in the first half, because obviously Newcastle, I felt they were maybe a bit too sleepy in that first 45 minutes. City went very ball dominant in terms of their 11. Lots of midfielders, sort of even, Jack Grealish, Bernardo Silva playing on the wing. It felt like City were able to sort of maybe do what they wanted to. Newcastle didn't really get in the faces.
I think they were trying to do a little bit of press, but I think it's obviously hard against City because they move the ball around so well. They make you run and work and just pass the ball very easily. I think towards the end of it, I think we're starting to do a bit more of a press and got a good little bit of possession sometimes, and just tried to make it work quick. We try and do the break. That's how we're doing it. I think we were pulling back and Shaw was playing long balls into the channels and having Murphy run on and Barnes on the left-hand side. So it's a little bit of a different tactic. You know what you're going to get from City, which is play, pass, and move. It's just how do you react to that, I guess, once you get the ball. But yeah, interesting one. We've had a sleepy couple of starts, but I'd like to see us really get into some people's faces moving forward.
Yeah, I remember that opening game of the season for Newcastle, that Southampton game where obviously down to 10 men early doors, and it felt like there's a bit of needle there. But in the game since, I agree with Newcastle's. Maybe the performances haven't quite been there, even though the results have. I mean, look, it was fairly even in terms of the stats in that first half. There were 6 shots for Newcastle, 8 for City, 2 on target for the Magpies, 3 for City. Obviously, the big talking point comes around 35 minutes, 10 minutes before half-time. For me, fantastic work from Jack Grealish, who I thought, from a City point of view, was probably the best player on the pitch, bar the guy who actually put the ball in the net. I guess when you've got an 80 million quid left back, as City do, and he's doing sort of Cruyff turns inside the penalty area and slotting beautiful finishes in between players, like, you can't really legislate much for that, can you?
Nah, not at all. Is always my first pick this season going into the Fantasy Premier League. So I'm glad Gvardiol actually stepped up and slotted one in the net.
It's taken him a while to actually score a goal, hasn't it? What are we, 6 games in? It's shocking.
Playing up top and might change your fortunes.
Yeah. Fantastic finish though.
Yeah, great finish. First point, I think Grealish did really well, but I think also Trippier, jumped in. His older head should probably know better at that point, but absolutely got skinned. And then I suppose drop of the shoulder for Gvardiol, a nice little finish through Tonali's legs isn't a bad finish for a left back, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you think City were good money for the win? The leading at half time. Getting ahead of myself there. But do you think 1-0 for City was fair? Do you think Newcastle would have been upset about that?
I think we had a couple of chances and maybe it just didn't fall right. So I didn't feel too hard done by at 1-0. To be 1-0 down against City at half time is probably expected in most games. It's how you build on that second half and how you can come out firing in the second half, which I think we kind of did for a certain period anyway.
Yeah, I agree. The goal comes at a weird time because I felt City were comfortable enough before that. But either side of Gvardiol putting City ahead, there was a few moments where Newcastle broke in behind. Kyle Walker had to do a bit of last-ditch defending. Then obviously a big chance. I think it was Joe Linton on the brink of half-time. Ederson making a strong save. Yeah, fantastic save. Sort of didn't really have much to do and gets called upon as Pope did in the second half as well. But moving across that that second period, two very different sort of starts, in my opinion, for City. First half, very composed, very controlled, got possession. Probably should have taken a 2-goal lead. I didn't mention the Gundogan chances. First of all, sort of shot he probably should have taken earlier and then slipping Haaland through. But look, City 1-0 up, fair enough. For me anyway, the frustration comes from the way they started that second half, because it felt like they were too passive and allowed Newcastle back in.
Yeah, and I think there was a couple of warning signs for you as well. Murphy, I think, played really well on the right-hand side, quick, physical, and even when he came up on the left-hand side against Walker in the second half at some points, really kind of put the pace against him and challenged him and thought, come on, well, you're going to have to give me a go. So getting him behind the back there was good. The final kind of product into the box, not always the best, but there was definitely clear chances that we could have done. Just to pick up on that Gundogan point, though, I'm kind of glad that he didn't show up today, really. I think he had probably a very poor performance for his standards. So it was, lucky, because he definitely should have scored when Pope basically gifted him the ball.
I think that was reflected in Gvardiol taking him off at 1-1, and we'll get to the penalty incident in a moment. But it was a great signing for City, getting him on a free transfer. My fear is that with Rodri going down for the season, he's going to play a lot more minutes than was intended. And then do you say, well, maybe you should have actually Bruno Guimaraes, for example, he was at the start of the summer, rumours perhaps that City would go after him. Is that a mistake in the transfer? I don't know. I guess time will tell. Let's move on to the penalty then. A bit of self-destruction from City, sort of giving the ball away unnecessarily. Fantastic incisive play in Anthony Gordon, who was, in my opinion, probably Newcastle's best player throughout the entire day. Ball gets slipped in, played onside by Kyle Walker. Penalty or not?
For me, I'm going to get absolutely slated here by loads of Geordies and my pals. But for me, I just don't really think he gets touched enough to go down. He obviously wants to go on his right foot and probably finish round. But I think the defender's on his right shoulder. I can't remember. It might have been a Kanji. I can't remember who it was. Was on his right side, stopping him from going on his favoured foot. But he's tried to do the best thing in the situation. And I think he's got a little bit lucky. Sorry, everyone.
Well, it's interesting. You backed up by Alan Shearer. I saw on Twitter. He said exactly the same, that he didn't think it was a penalty. It's weird. Can it be a dive, but it can also be a penalty at the same time? I don't. Maybe this is where we need some sort of rule change, and you have a direct free kick or something inside the box, because Edison comes out, he doesn't get the ball, and be that manufactured contact on Gordon's part, he touches him. So therefore, you'd say maybe it's a foul, but I also think Gordon leaves his foot in. It's
that classic leaving the foot in. I think there's been many penalties in the past that have been given for someone just kind of outstretching or putting their foot into a keeper just to, I suppose, initiate that contact. And for me, it's probably not a penalty and not the right way to get a penalty decision. But I agree with you to have some really well. Oh yeah, really well. Struck well. I don't know. I'm always very nervous about Newcastle penalties, and if it's not Iceman Isaac taking them, cool, calm, and collected, I think Gordon's probably the better shout of whoever was left on the pitch at that point.
Yeah. It came sort of. There was about a 5-minute spell where City looked really flustered, and maybe Anfield is the only ground I would say that's the worst place in English football to give the crowd something. That, having sort of been in control of the contest for pretty much the first hour, it felt like there's a few flashpoints. Grealish was checked for an elbow on Tonali. Personally, I found it a little bit embarrassing, Sandro Tonali going down as he did. Are you agreeing? Do you think it's fair? Should he have been sent off? Should he have been marched out of the ground? I don't know. I think most people said no red card was the right decision.
I think no red card, probably the right decision. Yes, Sandro went down softly, but at the same time, I think he's wound Jack up enough for initiating that, and I think maybe something should have possibly been done there. Maybe it's just a yellow card and a bit of a warning or a talking to, but there doesn't seem very much. And then it kind of bubbled over again in the far corner, where they were having a little bit of handbags again. But I think it was just a plan. I think at that point later on, Grealish was already on a yellow card, so I think he was trying to rile him up and get a little bit more meat on the bones with the decision.
Yeah. It felt like there was. It could have gone. I think, to be fair to Jack Grealish, he did really well to sort of focus on his game, because having been And look, it was absolutely fair enough tactic to do. It's been a week of chat about dark arts and whatnot. I felt like Newcastle had every right to sort of maybe try and rile one or two City players. That's their prerogative. But I'm giving Grealish credit, again, as I did in the first half. I felt like, while he maybe wasn't as effective from a creative point of view, he certainly kept his head, which I guess you can only ask in that situation. After that, then, I think City found the rhythm again. They brought on the substitutions, the wingers, Doku and Savinho. Savinho had a great impact for me, Doku less so. It felt, though, in a way, both managers, or maybe not managers, but both sets of players were like, 1-1, fair enough, difficult game. We don't want to overdo anything to maybe risk losing the match. We'll keep things a little bit safer in the final 10, 15 minutes. And I think 1-1 is about as fair a result as you can ask for in this situation.
Yeah, I think so. And like I said at the start, if you'd offered me 1-1, I'd have taken it. And even watching the game today, I think 1-1 is probably fair. There's a couple of good saves and a couple of good opportunities. I think probably City maybe has had one or two more at the end of the day. So I'll count my lucky stars that, we're walking away with a point against the reigning champions.
You tell me then, because I'm looking at Newcastle's results so far this season, and I'm saying that's decent. You've obviously got a third round League Cup game against Wimbledon that should have been played last week, but had to be rearranged, actually moved as well to St James's. You're looking like you're probably going to be in the fourth round of the League Cup. Only one defeat from the first six. Maybe left a couple of points out there against Bournemouth, but not necessarily the strongest team against Spurs. And I can't. Is there many complaints? Because looking at it on sort of face value, it feels quite strong.
On paper, it looks great. If you've relived looking at highlights for our podcast, then probably not the best viewing at all. I think we've got very lucky. I think we've obviously had that kind of handball that happened in the Bournemouth game to get rid of a goal for them, which made us finish, was it 1-1, I think it was. And then there's been a couple of other games where it's been very, very scrappy. But kind of looking forward, apparently the old saying goes, if you're a good team shows, bad play on the pitch but wins games. I'll absolutely take that and take the position that we're in at the minute. I think on one of our recent podcasts I was like, do not adjust your television screens, we are third in the Premier League as my lasting thing, and I'm absolutely happy. If we can build on this, then hopefully we can have a really good strong finish and potentially look towards January and maybe actually make a signing that is worthwhile this time.
Yeah, that's another thing as well that's worth mentioning. Obviously, the whole PSR, net spend, bringing in money, not being able to buy, etc., etc. I think Newcastle did really well to keep hold of the three main guys, Gordon, Isaac, and Bruno Guimaraes. But it's a solid start to season. I think you'd have probably taken that at the start of the campaign. You've now got that platform to build on. From a City point of view, I think it's pretty much similar to you. Some scintillating performances at times, some maybe stodgy performances at times. It's first 6 games this season. I think you have to properly judge where your team is at, what their chances are this campaign after 10. Maybe even a little bit later if you've got European competition like City do. In terms of this game, I think for City, it was more important not to lose, having just had Rodri and the Arsenal game and the emotion of that. Going to St James's Park, put up a decent enough performance. If you can snatch it, incredible, fantastic. But I think we shake hands and we say a job well done.
Yep, happy with that.
Fantastic then, Hodgie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for bashing this one out with us. It's been fun.
Hey, no worries. Thank you very much for having us on.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.